this leads me back to a question I was thinking about a long time ago. You were talking about setting up an organization. Part of me looks at myself as an individual and goes, the things I've had to put in place to block out distraction. Like I use a software that prevents me from, I don't know, accessing YouTube during working hours, right? And why? Because it's a distraction and it's really easy and I can just go over, or I've turned my phone into basically a dumb phone. It hardly has anything on it because that was the simplest way for me to get around the problem of just how compelling might be an appropriate word the phone can be to constantly like draw my attention. It makes a beep or it makes a noise. It's like I turn pretty much the notifications or don't make noise, and my wife is special. My wife makes a beep. Nobody else can beat me through my phone without calling.
Same.
And there's a frame in there that is like, I don't want this thing to be distracting me. And in some sense, I have not been able to, over the years of trying, just use my willpower to avoid that. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to turn it into a dumb phone. I'm going to put the blockers up, and it's been very helpful for me. So I'm curious, like again, that idea of attention is very resonant in this. Where attention, I'd say that broadly, you could say attention is a precondition to flow. You have to be able to put your attention on that thing almost as wholly as you can. So talking about that at an individual level, I just listed some things I've done: dumb phone, blockers on YouTube during working hours or whatever. What are things you think about or advise people to do if they're like, I'm trying to get into a flow state more in my work or in my life, but it's so hard because, I wish I wasn't as distractible as I was.
Yeah.
I think that's a very common feeling nowadays.
You need to identify what your key activities are and processes. What are the things that are valuable to you as an individual, as a team, as an organization, and why they're valuable. And then use friction to protect that. You've done it yourself, right? You've created friction to get onto YouTube. You can still do it if you want it.
Yeah. Yep.
You can still get messages if you want to. You can still open your phone and go into it, right? And then you need to ask yourself, well, how much friction do I need? Do I need to have the phone in a locker where I need to put a Rubik's Cube game and have to play something in order for me to unlock it again? Or how much friction do you need to get it to your devices? Or how much friction do you need to create for people not to interrupt you? But also, how can you reduce friction to do the things that you want to do?
There's a lot of time spent understanding the way you describe it as identity or purpose, like the clarity of the goal. I'm 100% behind that, and again, I haven't thought of it from the flow angle.
Sure.
Although, I appreciate that lens as well. Is like what you're actually doing in this is capturing attention, in the right places, and not getting distracted by those endless distractions that are out there. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I had a non-commissioned officer when I was in the Army who told me, sir, go home. There's always more work, because I just kept staying late trying to get it all done.
Yeah.
And she was just going like, sir, stop it. There's always going to be something else you have to do. You have to stop at some point. And it started reframing the question for me of not how do I get all the work done, but what's the right work to do. And a lot of this focus on attention, focus on identity, focus on clarity of goal is around like, hey, if you know what the identity of the game is, if you know the identity of the team as it relates to the game and the studio, now it allows me to focus my efforts more narrowly to add the maximum value that I can add, instead of having to be distracted, as you described it, as almost, I've got to figure out the why. I've got to figure out, every time I start the task, I have to go like, well, wait a minute, why are we doing this? And I have to ask that question. And by the way, I'll say that's a good question to ask if you don't know the answer, right? I just think a mistake that some people make is they just assume an answer and go, and then they build the wrong thing. So it's a good question to ask, but it also points to this idea: if everybody's constantly asking that question, it means you have not set up the environment for that flow, because everybody's always hitting a roadblock and going, wait a minute, what's this for?
I mean, there's something to be said about smaller teams. Often, when studios start out smaller and become bigger, they get less and less access to flow because they're kind of in this bureaucracy loop
Mm-hmm.
where there's too many things coming in, tugging at their creativity and playfulness and being able to focus and shut down in a way, right? That's one aspect. But another cool aspect is that you were playing together.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And play, the study of play, seems to be indicative of a mode of operating that both kids and adults can come into that allows us to be in a hypothetical, a little bit artificial environment for us to operate in groups and teams, but it also allows for us to have lightness and less
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness, right? And that seems to be indicative of being a potential precursor to be able to get into flow as well, right? Where you have you have skin in the game, but not too much, so you'd be able to kind of play with it, right? And I think you learn a lot by playing games. And so if that was something that you did before intense work, uh, yeah, the flow fosters flow. So if you have flow in other
Hmm.
areas of your life, you will start to pick it up in different aspects of your life as well. And so that's one indicator that I see, and it's kind of a thing that I've been hearing in my head a lot. It's the sentence of "Let my people play." It's a
Hmm.
little sentence that sums up for me the able to improvise and be light, and for people to have the agency over their own player in a way within the game of creating games.
Did you enjoy this episode? If you did and are looking for more conversations like this one, join the Building Better Games Discord community. It's for leaders and producers in game dev who are frustrated with solving the wrong problems and who want to share experiences and learn how to lead and build better games. Check out the show notes to join. I'll see you there.